Meanwhile, David has detoured a few miles south in the direction of Halifax, where he's off to pay a call at historic Shibden Hall to uncover the secret and very revealing diaries of a singular Georgian lady.
We drew close together, made love and had one of the most delightfully long, tender kisses we've ever had. Said she, in the midst of it, "Oh, don't leave me yet." This renewed and redoubled my feelings, and we slept in each other's arms.
Curator Angela Clare can reveal the racy private life of intimate diarist Anne Lister, an unconventional woman who came to be known as Gentleman Jack.
She was born in 1791 and eventually inherited the hall and the estate. So these are some facsimiles of the diary pages. There's about 7,500 pages in total, about 4 million words, 27 volumes, detailing everything. About a third of it was written in code, and those were the more inner thoughts. So that was about her relationships, her sexual exploits, and her sort of thoughts and feelings about other people that you might not want somebody to read.
You say in code, but have you been able to decipher it?
Well, the code was deciphered by a descendant of Anne Lister's, John Lister. He was the last person to live here at Shibden Hall, and he deciphered the code, but at the time he realised the content was a little bit explicit. So you can see here, this is her handwriting. So once you get your eye in, you can read it reasonably well. This is where
it almost looks like Greek, doesn't it?
Yes, Greek symbols, well spotted.
Yeah.
So it was a code of her own devising. So it was a mixture of Greek symbols. There was brackets, stars.
I'm intrigued. What was she actually writing about in code?
Well, she wasn't interested in men at all, and she knew this from a very young age. So it's what we'd call today a lesbian. She was definitely homosexual. At the time, there was no terminology for that, and no real lesbian identity that she could associate with. So she was quite a pioneer, really. She's often termed as the first modern lesbian. So in the coded sections, that's actually where she's talking about her relationships with women and having sex with lots of women as well. So it's all in there. It's all in the juicy details. She actually puts a cross in the margin when she has an orgasm, and that's quite regular.
Anne Lister was flamboyant, flouting convention and claiming the same privileges as men of her class. She ran her estate, sank 2 coal mines, attended medical lectures and mountaineered in the Pyrenees.
She was quite lucky. A lot of women you had to marry, you had a lot of obligation to conform and find a husband, basically. And obviously when you married them, everything you had belonged to them. Anne was never going to marry a man, and she didn't want to be dependent on anybody else. Also, by 1832, she'd met Anne Walker.
And what kind of relationship were they having?
Oh, they were very much together. Anne courted her and she won her over, and they eventually moved in here together at Shibden Hall, and they lived here together as kind of husband and wife. They had a ceremony at a church in York. So they were lovers, and they lived here, very much together over the years.
In Anne's lifetime, male homosexual acts were punishable by death, and until 1967 by imprisonment. Lesbianism simply didn't exist legally, but gay women could not expect broad-mindedness.
So the nickname, Gentleman Jack, I mean, did she know of that name? It's quite an unkind nickname.
She was very manly in appearance, I guess, and she wore black and she sort of strode around. So she had this quite male appearance. But again, it was a way to undermine her because she was very popular, she was very clever, very successful businesswoman. So the only thing they could do was have a bit of a dig at her.
Anne carried on regardless of intimidation or censure, and recorded it all.
This was her bedroom, just to our right, and this was her corridor where she kept all of her books. Chances are this room was some kind of dressing room and a work room where she probably wrote her diaries. And this is where we think the diaries were rediscovered by John Lister.
She died in 1840 with her wife at her side while travelling in Georgia.
What's the most interesting thing in your mind, do you think, discovered in the diaries?
Well, it's a great historical resource about the period, but actually what kind of piques the interest really is her relationships with other women and how she was, as we turn out, the first modern lesbian. And Anne Walker, the partner that moved to Shibden Hall with her, they had a wedding ceremony in York, in a church, blessed by a priest. So it's as close as you can get to a modern gay marriage. We didn't even have the terminology then. Again, the term lesbian didn't come till much later. And even homosexuality, it was very kind of hidden and not talked about and seen as something very other. And it's taken 200 years to get to the point where we can now talk openly about relationships that people have.
And 2 centuries for Anne Lister's voice to be heard loud and clear. Time marches on, though.